Ladies and gents, welcome. My name is Wasmatic and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the process of logistics in the game Foxhole, which is a fairly large-scale war simulator I've been playing for about a month now. If you don't know what logistics is, or you're fairly new to the game, it's everything involved in extracting raw resources from the ground, refining those resources into a usable material, and then taking those materials, either delivering them to where they're needed on the in the war effort, or putting them in a factory and making equipment and then delivering them to where they're needed in the war effort. There are three main types of raw resources that you will need to gather in the game, and you could also consider potentially a fourth. So let's talk about what the basic materials are first. So on the map you will see we have salvage fields, which are represented by this screw icon here, and if you mouse over those you can see how much resource is left in that location, so you can choose whether you want to go and gather there or not. And this material is the most basic and abundant material in the game. You take that and you will extract that from the fields or the mines and take them to a refinery, and you can convert those basic materials into you can convert the scrap into either basic materials, diesel, or explosive materials. And so this is the most abundant and most required resource in the game in terms of its volume. The second resource, which is also very important, which you cannot gather at the outset of a war, are components. I say you cannot gather them at the outset of the war. You can't gather them manually at the outset of the war, but I'll touch upon in a minute how you can actually gather those materials initially. And then thirdly is sulfur. And sulfur you would gather, and that would be used for large explosive materials like, I don't know off the top of my head, maybe artillery shells, something like that. If I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments. And then finally, there is an additional and a lot more rare resource, or resources that proc through an RNG process whilst you are gathering manually at these locations. And they are materials that are used for prototyping and research, which is another player-driven process which is beyond the scope of this video. So those would be materials like copper, iron, and aluminium. There is an additional way that you can gather resources from the outset of the war, and it is the only way you can gather components from the outset of the war, and that is to use mines. Mines are randomly generated locations on the map where if you fuel them, you can gather resources, and as long as they're kept fueled, they just keep ticking, and they will keep ticking and gathering resources until they hit their maximum capacity. Now, those mines are fueled using diesel. If they are, the cheapest way to fuel them is using diesel, and they will tick at a very low rate and generate resources. However, you can also use petrol, which will increase the rate of production, and that is done by finding a location on the map that has this icon. It is an oil well. Once you have found your oil well on the map, simply drive to it, ideally using one of these haulers. Drive up until you're touching it and press the E button. What you will see here, the thing about oil wells is the rate of production is linked to the population on the server. So if you are on at a very quiet time of day, it can take an awfully long time for this crude oil to be produced. Now I've been here about 30 minutes already and nothing's spawned, but thankfully I found a town hall nearby which has given me well, there's plenty of resources there. So if you see there's crude oil in the oil well, you just left click on it and that will automatically transfer it into your hauler here. Once you have filled your truck with oil, or if you don't want to fill your truck, but you can just take 3 if it's really slow, and that will give you enough to produce some petrol. Ideally you want 2 cans of petrol to fully empty a mine. Once you've gathered your oil, you can then check the map, and what you're looking for is the nearest refinery, which is represented by a hammer. Once you have found your way to a refinery, you simply drive up to it with your nose first if you like, and then press E and you open it, and you want to take the oil barrels here that you've used to produce petrol. Take all of this, shift click, make sure that you have personal selected because it's likely somebody might take it if you don't. Shift click, and that will start the refinery process, which is going to take 30 minutes. So we'll be back in 30 minutes. I couldn't wait 30 minutes, so I'm just going to take one can now. This is enough to demonstrate how to use it. And I'm going to head to the nearest component mine and hope that nobody is there. So I've arrived at a component mine, and as you can see here, there are 148 components already mined. In finding the mine that you want to go to, you can mouse over on the map and it will tell you how many resources are there ready to be collected. This says 162. 169, so you can see these are being produced. Now this is actually full of petrol, which presents a bit of an issue for me because I was going to show you how to fill it up with petrol, but I'll show you anyway because of the process. So you would go to where your petrol is stored, click it so it's in your backpack, and then you press tab, click on petrol, and then it goes into your slot number 3, and then what you have to do is press 3, walk up to the whatever it is you want to refuel, and left click. You'll see that starts to refuel. So once you've driven up to the mine, it's the same process again. You drive up, you press E and you shift click, and that will put the resources after an assembling process into your vehicle. Now, I'm not going to wait here to fill the truck because this is just for demonstration purposes only. So you have seen now how to gather resources using a mine. Now the components, really important at the outset of the war. The components need to be gathered from mines. You can't gather those until you unlock the sledgehammer. I'm going to show you now, because this is conveniently situated, how to manually gather the resources. Okay, so a quick trip to grab a sledgehammer and we're good to go again. So, gathering manually. When the war first starts out, you will have your hammer like this, and it will be auto-equipped in slot 1. And to gather, right at the outset of the war, you'll only have this. You just left click and you just smack stuff like this. Now, a point to note when you're gathering manually and when you're gathering in in any other mode, these small pieces that you see breaking off, they actually give you more resources. So if I was to stand here, for example, this is a big pile, and if you look in the bottom left, you'll see gathering manually, I'm taking 5 every time, and then it will suddenly break in a minute, and I'll get a spike of 15. Keep going, I'll get another spike in a minute. Spike of 25. Spike of 25. If I was to go on this piece here, I get a spike of 35. You will also see it's going to be so resources like this here with the shiny bit over it. That actually gives you a spike in resources as well. So there you go, 93. So they're like an abundant spike, but never leave the small pieces thinking that the big pieces are where you can gather. So you'll say I'm getting 5 at a time, and then when I break a piece down, I'll get maybe 25, and then this small piece will give me probably more again. 35, right. So you get to a point where you're encumbered, that will go red here, and you will take it to whatever vehicle you have with you. Here's my R1 truck. Again, at the outset of the game, the R1 truck is all you will have to transport initially, and you just shift click, put this stuff into the hauler. Now, as technology progresses, as we were talking about research, we will unlock sledgehammers like this, and that then gives you the opportunity to gather components from component fields manually, but also you'll see now in the bottom left you'll gather more per smack. So I'm gathering 10 at a time instead of 5. First off, at the start of the war, you'll be using a hammer and one of these vehicles here, and then as we unlock more, we will progress to using harvesters to gather the resources. And this is a harvester here, and you can see this chap here next to me using one as well. These are much more abundant gatherers, so they're much faster. So here we go, and that's it. That's all you do. You just left click. Now I have a Corsair Scimitar mouse, and I have it macroed so that I can toggle left click on and off, so I have no hands on the keyboard now. But you'll see that in the bottom left it's ticking away. It's 10 per tick. You see 106 spike there. So I'm going to go on now to talk about how to transport these materials. Now we already know how to transport materials from this R1 truck. That's fairly straightforward. You just drive it up to the refinery, press E, and there you go. So I'm just going to touch upon the two other types of transport that you can get. One is this flatbed hauler here, and the other one is another type of hauler which is specifically designed only to use, only to gather raw resources. You can't take any crates of anything in it. But we'll cover stockpiles and other elements of logistics in the next few videos. So we have seen all of the gathering processes now, from mines through to manual gathering with a hammer, a sledgehammer, and then a harvester. But you then want to take those resources and, in the most efficient manner possible, transport them to the refinery. So we've seen me transport stuff in the refinery in an R1, which is the basic truck that you get at the outset of the game. There is also another hauler, the second resource truck for raw resources. So this isn't for crates or for shipping or anything like that. This is just for transporting raw resources that come out of the ground, and that is the R5 Atlas hauler, which at this moment in time I do not have access to one of those, and I can show you the icon for it. That's an R5 Atlas hauler. Now that can only gather raw components, raw sulfur, raw scrap, and transport it to the refinery, but it's very quick, and I think it costs about the same resources as the R5, the canvas-backed hauler, sorry, the R1, the canvas-backed hauler, to transport, and it uses the same amount of fuel. Like the R1, that holds 1500 raw resources, so they're both the same in terms of the capacity. I think I'm right in saying that the R5 Atlas hauler is a little bit faster, and it is very specialised in that it can only carry raw resources. I'm going to show you also here quickly how to spawn vehicles. If you're at the start of the game and you don't know how to spawn a vehicle or where they are, you can actually gather some B-mats, which are basic materials, which is made from raw resources, from scrap, and you can use where's the garage? Here we go. So you can use a garage if you carry the B-mats that are needed to make a vehicle, the vehicle that you want, and you carry them. You have to carry them on your person. You can go to the garage and you can spawn the blueprint, and then you just walk up with your hammer and you smack it with your hammer, and as long as you've got those resources carried in your backpack, you can make that vehicle yourself. But some vehicles use R-mats, which are quite rare, and they're made from components, as we've seen earlier. But I'm going to show you how to spawn a vehicle, because the public resources here, you can see there's tons of stuff in Skelter Course in terms of public vehicles and boats and whatnot. And I'm going to spawn the flatbed mule, which is really and ideally how you should be gathering resources. They can hold 5,000 raw resources in a container on the back. So what you do is you walk up to you can either get these from the seaport like this, or there will be storage units public like this here. So you just mouse over and see what's there. You can see that there's actually a mule there as well. So I'm here, I walk up to the seaport, click E. Now I've selected the shield, which is my squad's stockpile, and I'll cover stockpiles in a later video. You can go to the public, there's a scrap hauler there, but there's no mules, so I'm going to use one of my squads. And you just click on that. It's the BMS Pack Mule Flatbed, and off you go. Right, so you've spawned that, but you can't use this on its own. And we want to go back to the seaport, and what we're looking for now is a resource container. So you want to look at these tabs here, just go to public and see, and you want containers, which is this one right at the end. Click on that. We have one resource container. So you click on that to spawn it, and then we're going to use a crane, and I'm going to show you how to unload, offload. So we get in the crane, press E. Okay, that's not worked. So you can't actually lift these onto the back of there until you've packaged them. So if you can't do it from the crane, because sometimes that bugs out, walk up to it, press E on the container, and it's this little button here that you want with the cardboard box and the arrow pointing into it. Click on that. We will package this up. And then we head to the crane. You press Q, like with any other vehicle, to get in. And then you just right click the crane to move it around. And once you get that cog showing over the top of the container, you left click whilst holding the right click, and it picks it up. And then use right click again and drag to put that on the back of the vehicle. You can use A and D if you like to rotate them. You don't need to, but you can. Then once you see the cogs over there, you left click again whilst holding right click. And that's it. It's on the back of your vehicle. So we have arrived at the scrap field. There's not a huge amount of scrap left, but we're going to gather here anyway. What you will normally find if it's a busy scrap field is there'll be lots of these the resource containers lined up, ready to be filled. But this is a fairly quiet salvage field, so there's only this. If you want to gather as a team, it's always good to have a big line of containers here, a couple of these transport flatbeds running, and then you can run them back and forth to the refinery, somebody driving and a couple of people gathering, but it's just me for now. So get in the crane, which is here, and we want to get in the driver's seat, so I press Control 1 to do that, and we take this off. Now there's no harvester here, so I'm going to have to do this manually, which is a pain. And then you want to drop it somewhere, ideally facing into the scrap pile, which is easy to get to. And then you can't unpackage it from the crane here, so I don't think you can. So I just always run up to it. I have to unpackage it to be able to use it, so press E. It'll unpackage automatically. And I am going to check to see if there's a sledgehammer here or not. And I'm going to fill the container. Fortuitously, you can see that we have spawned some aluminium here. This is one of those rare resources. So it's just procced as I was hammering away, and we want to gather this and take that to the refinery as well. So here we are, arriving back at the refinery. Somebody's actually using the crane, so they're filling up a fuel truck. It's good stuff. And I will just park here. There you go, they've finished. And I will show you how to offload. Repackage. There we go. So you jump out, press Q, get in the crane, press Q. This is the refinery here. We want to pick up our container. And you just take it, and as always, right click, move the crane until you see the two cogs, then left click, and it will automatically drop. And then it'll bring up the refinery window. If you're not sure what to make with salvage, make B-mats. That is the most fundamental requirement in the game, so shift click on that. If you also have some aluminium or some other rare resources like iron, copper, or aluminium, shift click, get that refined, and then always package. So click on this. It's good practice, because if you use a crane like that and you click away, you don't get the option. And then finally we're going to put this vehicle back, because we're not going to do any more gathering today, and I will show you how to put it back in the seaport so that somebody else can use it and it remains protected from any partisan attacks or anything like that. So first of all, we want to put this container into storage, which we can't do. It's very busy here, so we're going to have to wait. So to put a lot of people will just dump resource containers anywhere really, the side of the road. I like to put them back in storage so that somebody else can find them easily and use them. So you want to, same thing, drop it onto the pad here by the seaport. It will bring up the storage, and you want to submit loading area equipment. I think this was a shield one, so no, it's not. So if it's not, it will tell you one or more items are not reservable. So submit loading area equipment, and that will put that container into storage. And then to put the vehicle away, you just get back in. You don't need to drive onto the pad, and again, you may get some people who are so impatient that if you are on the pad, they'll have a little hissy fit at you. And this was a shield vehicle, so I can click on submit vehicle. And there you go. So that's it. I'm done. Hopefully that was useful. I've tried to keep it as detailed as possible because I think it warrants that level of investment in time, including down to what buttons to press. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Part 2 will cover taking those resources that we've turned into materials and then look at manufacturing, using both factories and as we have here. There's two types of factories and mass production factories. We're going to look at those and the advantages of using which and when. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope it's been useful. If you're a new player, and you're just interested in logistics, feel free to drop by the Discord for SHLD at shield.love in your web browser. Alternatively, come and follow me on twitch.tv/wasmatic. I stream 3 nights a week and 1 day GMT, and happy to answer any questions that you might have. If I've missed anything or you want to know anything that wasn't clear, drop a like and put a comment below. But for now, I will see you in the next one. Bye.